For this skill, there are some words that we need to know what they are before we begin. So if we look up at the top, rate of change means the same word as another word that we know, which is slope. And then there's several ways to find slope. So the first way that we can find slope from a graph is to do rise over run. So that's going to be how many up and down, and then how many left and right. The next way we can find slope is on your star chart. So this is not a formula you need to memorize, but you do need to know how to use it. It says m equals y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1. And then another way that we know how to find slope, or one of the ways we've discussed, is the change in y divided by the change in x. And then of course we know our equation is y equals mx plus b, where m is slope. So that's what we need to know to solve these problems. If we look at the first one, it says this graph models the linear relationship between the temperature of Earth's atmosphere and the altitude above sea level. Which of these best represents the rate of change, the temperature with respect to altitude? So what that means is we have to find the slope of this line. So we can tell from looking at it that it's a negative slope. It's going down. From left to right, it's going down. And then the other thing that we have to check is on the y-axis, it's counting by 10. So it goes from 0 to 10 and from 10 to 20. So that's very important as we go through this problem. The x-axis is counting by ones because it goes from 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So we can count by ones on that one. It looks like we start at about 15 here. It's in between the 10 and 20. And then we just need to find another exact point on the graph. We can even go all the way down here to the very bottom point. So if we go from the very top to the very bottom, we can do our slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So our y2 would be this point down here. We can label this point. It goes over 10 and down 50. And then this point up here goes, the x value would be 0 for this one, and the y value would be 15. So if we're going to use our slope formula, we would do our change in y. So we can start with either y point, and as long as we finish with that same point. So negative 50, so I'm starting with this point, minus the other y value, which is 15, over the same x value. I have to start with the bottom one, 10 minus the other x value, which is 0. And then whenever you solve that, you'll get negative 65 over 10, which simplifies to negative 6.5, which is our answer choice, letter F. So moving on to this one, we're going to do something very similar. We also need to double check what we're counting by. So on the x-axis, it's counting by ones. And on this y-axis, it's counting by 50s. So that's very important to pay attention to. On this one, they actually labeled the point. So if we start at this point, we would go up 100, up 50, and up 50 again, which is 100, and then over 1. So if we do rise over run this time, the rise is 100, and the run left and right is 1. So 100 divided by 1 is 100. In this problem, it says that the function y equals 3.75 plus 1.5 parentheses x minus 1, we're using this equation, can be used to determine the cost in dollars for the taxi ride X miles. What is the rate of change, remember slope, of the cost in dollars with respect to the number of miles? Now remember, our basic equation, our slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is slope. If we look at that equation, slope is what's being multiplied by the x. And then if we look at our equation, the only thing being multiplied by the x is the 1.5. So our answer is F. Lastly, we have a table, and we can just find the change in y and divide by the change in x. So the change in y is going down 9. The change in x is it's going up 2. So if we do the change, delta triangle means change. The change in y over the change in x is -9 divided by 2, which is letter B.